All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1,000,000 Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Roger Martin. Roger, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be on it. I appreciate the
Yeah,
opportunity.
absolutely. And I want to give a shout out to the folks at Podcast Guest, because that platform, that's where you and I met. You and I wouldn't even be having this conversation today if not for that platform. And I have found a number of really amazing guests through that platform. So I just want to give those guys a shout out, because they're doing a valuable work in this world for sure.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree.
And Roger, so what I'd like to do is I'd just like to start off by turning it over to you so that you can, provide a little context, give a little bit of background on, what you do, maybe how you got into it, if you're feeling inspired to share that, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do. We'll just kind of start there, Roger.
Sure. Yeah. So I am the CEO and co-founder for two franchised brands.
Okay.
One is called Rockbox Fitness. So it's a kickboxing, boxing, functional strength training, group fitness concept. We have 60 stores open right now across 22 states, something like that.
Okay.
And I co-founded with another partner back in 2017. And then our second brand, franchise brand, is called Beam Light Sauna, two E's, BEEM. Beam Light Sauna is an infrared sauna studio concept. So usually the studios will offer anywhere from 7 to 9 private rooms that have infrared saunas in them. Okay. And people join on like a membership basis. So it's our overarching parent company is called Thrive More Brands, and Thrive More is really just a holding company for these brands, these franchise brands that we own, that are mainly focused in health and wellness. Okay. I spent 25. So I got into franchising in 2017. We started franchising in 18. But for the 25 years prior to that, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. So right out of undergraduate school, I went to work for a Fortune 100 pharma company, and then worked my way up through the ranks of a couple other companies, moving back and forth across the country, eight different cross-country moves. And wow! And ended up in the COO role, Chief Operating Officer role of a manufacturing firm, a pharmaceutical manufacturing firm. And after that 25 years, I'm very successful, and I'm very grateful for it, because it gave me a lot of the training and skills and knowledge that I apply in these businesses. But I didn't want my epitaph to say, here lies the man who sold pills that treated people but never cured them. I think the pharmaceutical industry is wonderful in that it can create life-saving medicines, but there's also, I think our culture is kind of a pill, take a pill to fix everything. And that's just not who I am. I much more believe in whole foods and exercise and moving your body, and I have a love for combat sports and mixed martial arts and kickboxing. So and live music, ironically, which brings Rockbox together with boxing, kickboxing, and then we add in this kind of crazy lighting that happens during the workouts, and of course, obscenely loud music. But yeah, so I think I got into entrepreneurship. You left corporate America after 25 years. Dropped the mic on corporate America to be a founder, and I think on Monday, of course, I woke up on a Monday without health insurance or the really nice salary I had. And Monday was kind of freaky. On Tuesday, I was a little bit better. And by Wednesday, I never looked back. Wow. And I think I think when and it's just like children, there's never a right time to start a business. There's only your time. And it just came to me that it was my time to work for myself and do what I love and serve people in a way that I think, is aligned with my value system. And so I actually get a benefit, a couple of ways. One, I help entrepreneurs or people that want to become entrepreneurs, because usually people that get into franchising, some of them are already, well-established business people that have their own businesses. But a lot of them are leaving corporate America, and this is their first entree into entrepreneurship. So with franchising, it's nice because you have some guide rails, you have some some bumpers, if you will, to keep you in the lane, and the business model is proven, and the business model works. You still have to work the business, that doesn't go away, but the model itself takes a lot of the guesswork out. And so I love helping entrepreneurs. I love leading people and helping them grow their personal wealth and grow their skill sets and their confidence when doing so. And at the same time, I know that the members that we serve through the franchisees, so the members of Beam Light Sauna or the members of Rockbox Fitness, I get from an arm's distance, positively impact their lives.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
help them lose some weight or gain some muscle, gain some confidence. With a sauna, the infrared sauna, relieve pain, renews skin. So people with eczema and rosacea and skin conditions, it helps. And obviously detoxes, so people have more energy, they sleep better. So I think these two brands really align with my personal values, and so it makes it easy to represent them. Yeah.
Wow. I love that. So you have been an entrepreneur for, if I'm right, 6 years now, since 2017 was when
right at 7 years. Yeah,
okay.
Right at 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny because as a kid, man, I was always pretty industrious and would sell the magazine, whatever the thing you were doing with the school at that time. And I was pretty good at that. And my dad was an entrepreneur, even though I didn't realize it. Like dad worked for himself. So, that's just all I grew up with. That's all I ever knew. Not realizing he was an entrepreneur, but my dad owned his own business, but he wasn't an entrepreneur. It was one of those things where I couldn't connect the dots because that's all I knew.
Sure.
But out of school, I got into pharma. I think I enjoyed the security of it. I certainly was paid great, and but I always knew at some point, and that's not true. That would not be completely honest. I think as I got older and really established, and I became established in the industry, and then I started working for some people that weren't that nice. Like, to be honest, weren't that nice. And I realized two things. One, I can do it better than these people. And two, I don't want to work around these kind of people. I want to choose who I work with and certainly who I work for.
I love that.
But I think everything happens for a reason, and my universe aligned to where I didn't have the last couple positions, even though they were high paying C-level positions. The CEO or the ownership, sometimes it wasn't the CEO, it was the ownership of the company, because I worked for a couple of private companies, just didn't align. And I realized, to hell with this. I'm going to go do something I love with people I love and people I want to work with. So I think the older we get, I don't know about you, but I know I'm 53, and I probably have I'm pretty sure I have less runway in front of me than I do behind me. And I want to do what I want to do with the people I want to do it. And that brings me joy. Yeah.
I can totally relate to that, Roger. And I can tell you from personal experience for me too, that you and we definitely have a lot of shared values for sure. And doing the right things with the right people for the right reasons. I mean, it just that makes a huge difference. And we can definitely accomplish so much more when we are doing it with like-minded people. And we can accomplish so much more than we could ever do on our own, and of course, I'm speaking to the choir saying that to you, So,
Sure.
Well, yeah. Okay. So now that we've got a little context, and that was fascinating, by the way. I'm going to switch gears here just a little bit. So I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. And so, Roger, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships, Roger.
Yeah. Difficult question, because it'd be selfish and narcissistic to think that, what I've achieved was all because of me. I mean, it's because of the influence of others that shaped me, right? So I think we're all shaped by those around us. We're shaped by those that we're in a relationship with, professionally or personally.
Yeah.
And to say a single person would be tough, but it's funny when that was the only one question that you had sent ahead of time for me to think about, and it made me think, and it made me reflect, and it's a damn good question. And I went back to college when I was an undergrad, and I had a fraternity brother, and his name's Michael Collins.
Okay.
Not the Irish guy, like but Michael Collins. And I have not talked to that guy in I don't know how many years. We had a falling out over some small business issue that was not worth the money to have a falling out over, but we were in our 20s when that happened. But that doesn't take away anything from the lessons and the kind of the wisdom that he had. So he was slightly older. He went to, I think he took a couple years off to work. He was a mechanic, and then he decided he wanted to go get a degree and went back and went to school full time.
Okay.
And he was a pledge brother of mine, and he ended up getting me a job it was just a Sunday. I worked just like 12 hours on a Sunday at a printing press where he ran this printing press, this check register printing press, back when people used to write checks. And I was the janitor, so I'd clean the place for 10 hours. But on breaks and or if I got all the work done and all that, waiting for him to finish up, he just made sure the thing was running and feed it the paper, these pallets of paper. We would sit there and just wax poetic, and he had so many life lessons, and he was 22 at the time, and I was 20, I guess, maybe. Okay. But he had so much wisdom for that age, and so much business wisdom. And I can't recall like specific, I'd give you some great examples. It's been 30 years plus, and I can't recall like specifics, but I vividly remember, sitting on pallets of check register paper, and listening to him tell stories and asking him questions about it. And he certainly had an entrepreneur mind. He got out of school, went to work for a company, and ended up leaving and then buying he got some financing, I think, from his father-in-law, and bought a company. Okay. And I'm sure he was very successful. But his mind around business and just the way to acquire customers, the way to service them, he was what I guess they call the flat rate mechanic. So you're going to get a certain dollar amount per repair that you made, when he worked in the shop. And so, of course, if it took you 30 minutes, you still got paid the same amount if it took you an hour and a half. And just the stories he would tell around, getting those jobs done. But just a guy that would give very selflessly, and was just wise beyond his years at that age, and someone I greatly looked up to. And I know that made me a better business person in ways I'll probably never even understand. Yeah. But when I got that question from you via email, I thought back, like, is it my dad? Is it my buddies I've had in corporate America that I still keep in touch with? Is it some great bosses that I've had? Because I have had some great leaders, had some not so great leaders. I have a great business partner right now, a couple great business partners actually. But I think if I had to like go back, like what was that pivotal moment? It was probably sitting in that. I mean, all the times talking in the fraternity house and doing stupid stuff like you do in college. But I think it was time sitting at that check printing, giant, printer, and the stories and just listening. I appreciate the most. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look back on that, and now, all these years later, you've gone through a very successful corporate career, and now for almost 7 years, you've been an entrepreneur. What are some of the things that what is like really stood out where you like look back at that time spent with Michael, like you said, 30 years ago, and here now it's still impacting you today. What's an example of something that might have come up, like, that you're like, what, man, that I'm really thankful, I'm really grateful to Michael for
Yeah.
that time spent, because it's still paying dividends to this day.
Yeah. I think, and I give a lot of credit to my parents for this too, but certainly, Michael was paying his own way through college, was working his way through college, and the grit he showed. There were many times where I'd see, he'd be out with us till 1 a.m, as college kids do, and then he'd be up at 5:30 a.m. to go, because the shift that he worked on that Sunday was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
And, didn't matter if he was hungover, didn't matter if he was exhausted from, doing whatever we did on Saturdays, and he just had grit, just absolute grit. And I know that rubbed off on me. I know watching that, I had a strong appreciation for just, this guy has no quit in him. There's no quit in this guy.
Yeah.
And I've tried to adopt that same approach, I think, in my adult and professional life.
Yeah. I mean, there's real power in that, and I think, and I don't know, I mean, I don't know Michael, but I'm sure that your guys' employer at the time appreciated his commitment, that like he could just be counted on to be there on Sundays from 6 to 6, even if he was out till 1 a.m. And I don't, maybe your employer never knew that, maybe
I don't think, I'm sure they did.
but
Sure they didn't. Yeah.
that, I mean, there is definitely something to be said for that, and there's that, it's grit, it's whether it's, we want to call it, that commitment, that what, and you alluded to this just not giving up, and because, as long as we don't give up, we never lose. We never lose, because we'll figure it out one way or the other. We're always going to figure it out one way or the other and stuff. It's the only time we lose is when we give up,
Yep.
And
yeah, I think life, business, everything, it's an infinite game, right? It just continues.
Yeah.
And you can't win an infinite game because it never ends. So the only thing you can do is play. Yes. And it's fun. I also have a podcast, and I recorded an episode this morning. It's called the Thrive More podcast. And the gentleman afterward, we turned off the cameras and turned off the cameras, but stopped the recording. We're talking. He was just asking some advice on business and growing his business. And I said, I can give you all kinds of books to read, and I could tell you 50 different little cliches right now. But I said, honestly, just keep showing up, keep offering value, keep giving without any expectation return. So when you do that long enough, if your time horizon is long enough, everyone else peels off. Everyone else quits. They just, like, if you want to win in business, just keep showing up, because the law of attrition sets in, and the average person, on the average day has the average work ethic, and they'll quit. Yeah. And business is about relentlessly showing up. And if you're giving and giving and giving and giving and not expecting, any reciprocity, you'll get reciprocity tenfold of what you give, because you don't have an expectation for it.
Yes.
But you just got to keep showing up.
That's
and
right.
I think that's where I find a lot of entrepreneurs that are entrepreneurs for the first time have that shocking realization that, holy moly, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. And, I mean,
I remember when I had that.
Yeah. I can, if you want a quick story, I can tell you right now where I was. I
totally want to hear it. This will be.
Yeah. So again, I'm the guy that would get off the airplane. There'd be somebody, pre-9 or even after 9/11, I guess, but they'd be outside the gate. They'd be holding my name, holding the thing with my name. They'd go over and, get my luggage, and depending on the event, these pharma events, the pharmaceutical events, they drive me to the hotel and even have me checked in or take me to the VIP, like it was a VIP life and it was pretty nice. But again, that's not the life I wanted. It was just the life I was living. So, exit that and go into Rockbox Fitness, and we're building the first flagship location. So I fortuitously met a guy, and he had a couple studios already, fitness studios. They were called something else, but I told him I'd put up all the money and bring his expertise in, and we'll build a national franchise kind of based on his concept, because he had a darn good concept. So fast forward, I'm building out the first flagship Rockbox location, and it's 6 a.m. in the morning. And we have 2 scaffolding set up, kind of like in a ladder style, rented from Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever. And we had steel delivered because we needed a place to hang the boxing bags and the tie bags, which are like for kickboxing. So now, of course, we have a whole rig that's professionally made, and it's all put together. But back then, we didn't, and so we buy these like 20-foot long steel girders, for lack of a better term, and heft them up into the ceiling, these open ceilings in the ceiling joints, and then you'd hang the 20 bags from them. But I remember, I was on the bottom, and I'm the guy at the bottom, a guy named Tommy, who's still with the company 6 years later, and then my business partner Steve is on the top. And we're hefting this up, so I'm pushing it up. Tommy's in the middle scaffolding, pulling it up, and Steve's on the top scaffolding, pulling it up and pushing it up. And it's 6 o'clock. It's still, I think it was still dark outside when we were doing this. And once I let go, of course, Tommy and Steve are holding it, and they're trying to get it up there. And I'm looking at the rear end of this big piece of steel, and I'm thinking, if they let go of that, I'm dead. But I can't leave because I got to be here for them in case they, and I just thought, what the hell have I traded myself? I had the most cush life in the world. And here I am, at 46, I guess back then, hefting steel up into the ceiling at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was just this epiphanal moment, because, we had, the time before all that was all about building the brand. I had hired consultants, like that was my world. That's, I knew how to do that, and I knew how to build a brand and messaging and advertising and all that. But the physicality of actually building this studio, which I look back and it was so incredibly rewarding, and it, I'm super proud of doing that. But it was a wake-up call of like, it is whatever it takes. Like, that, Kevin, it's whatever it takes. There is no, well, that's not my job, or, hey man, I'm a CEO, I don't do that. No, it is whatever the business requires, you have to do. And I learned that pretty early on. And there's crazy story after crazy story I can tell you of just the stuff which now is fine. Now I'm like, yeah, of course, you just got to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
But in corporate America, you do whatever it takes if it's in your job description.
Yes.
And an entrepreneur, you do whatever it takes, period.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the lesson I see most entrepreneurs having to learn. And I think everybody has to learn it on their time frame, and they have to walk their own path. Yeah. But I do see people that when they struggle with entrepreneurism, entrepreneurship, it's that they're not ready to endure that pain that you have to get to the reward.
Yes.
And that's and not everybody is, and that's fine. Absolutely. I think not everybody should be an entrepreneur, quite frankly.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and a couple of things come up, because you having had that experience with that beam, and I guarantee you there's plenty more, Roger, that you could share.
Oh yeah, sure.
So because you've had those experiences, now as this business grows and you get team members in place, you are a lot more, what's the right word I'm looking for, maybe empathetic towards them as well, because you've experienced it too. You've been right in their shoes doing the stuff that they now do, and yep. It gives us empathy. And the other thing too is, you're right, putting in our hours, We look at any great athlete, we look at Michael Jordan or anybody that is just like world class at what they do. What we don't see is all the hours they invested to make what they do now just this beautiful thing to watch. It's amazing. It's beautiful to watch them in that zone of genius. And they have invested hours and hours and hours to be able to do that.
Yep.
And
nobody sees it's all the stuff in entrepreneurship. I think you can kind of sum up by saying it's all the stuff you have to do that nobody will ever know that you did.
That's right.
And don't expect somebody to be grateful that you did it, because it's you have to do it. And we launched another brand, this Beam Light Sauna, and another business partner I have in that, she has a smaller studio, a smaller beam studio, sauna studio, and so she can do we have complimentary towel service, and each sauna takes like 4 towels, I guess, when it's all set up, and so she can handle that much laundry. Her team can handle that, so she has the laundry equipment in her. So when I built my beam, because I always want to build a business and run it for a minimum of 2 years. Usually I'll end up selling it after 2 or 3 years to a franchisee, and they buy a cash flowing business. But I always like to run the business and own it myself, build it with my own money, hire my own staff and have them run it. I always have a general manager to run it, but so I can find the pain points, right? I need to find the pain points in the business so that we can work those out, so that the franchisees don't experience those pain points. And the only way to really know how painful something is to do it yourself.
Totally.
And say, this is not good, right? So we launched, and I did a big pre-sale before. So we had, like 200 members when we opened the doors, which means every room was booked every hour of the day for, a month straight when we first opened, which is a high-class problem. But what we didn't account for is there's no human way possible to keep up with that much laundry. And so the machine, and I had commercial machines, they just couldn't keep up with that demand because we didn't anticipate it. So, another quick story is, and I had a whole team, people, first thing that they're going to think of when they're listening to this is, well, why didn't he have one of his employees at the studio do it? Because at the time I had a very young team, and they were all young women. And so what we had to do is we had to take what we couldn't finish in the day, had to take it to a commercial laundromat and use like 15 machines to get it all, to do it all.
Okay.
And
wow.
Every night, right? And so, but I couldn't ask one of them, because we closed at 9 o'clock, to go from 9 to midnight and do laundry and be alone in a laundromat. I just didn't feel right to ask a 22-year-old girl or 24-year-old woman to do that. And so who did the laundry for that 3 weeks until I hired a commercial linen service to provide it? This guy, me. So I mean, literally just think about, like, I come here to this beautiful office. We have 11,000 square foot headquarters for Thrive More Brands. And I'm a CEO all day long, making big decisions, quote unquote, doing all that. And, go home, eat dinner, and then drive downtown to pick up frickin' 6 carts of laundry and go to the laundromat and do laundry till midnight. And then drive it back to the studio, and then drive home, and then wake up at, 6:30 in the morning, put on my CEO hat, go back, be a CEO, and then, rinse and repeat, no pun intended. But those are the hours that, and again, it's what brings entrepreneurs to their knees are not big strategic decisions. It's not the whiteboard sessions where you're creating, genius moments. Though that's fun. That's the fun part of the business. What brings people to their knees is doing laundry at midnight.
That's right.
Because it's so remedial. It's so ridiculous that you're even doing it, but the business demands it so that you can serve customers the next day. And, a lot of times a solution is not immediate. You have to find, in my case, I had to find a linen company that could do it and have the quality towel we wanted, deliver in certain days, and work with the landlord of this development I'm in, blah, blah, blah. And that took about 3 weeks, which means for 3 weeks, whatever it took meant I had to go to the laundromat, which, is just ridiculous. At 50, I was 52 then. I'm a 52-year-old CEO at the laundromat every night, but that's what it took. And I think that is what those kind of moments putting steel beams up or again, I could give you 100 stories, but it would bore the audience. But the things that just, I kind of would stop and go, this is ridiculous. And yet it's necessary. It's necessary.
Well, and if we now look at that vendor that you found to take that job over and provide that service for the business and for your clients that you serve, I think it's a pretty safe bet that because of that experience that you had being there from 9 p.m. till midnight every night for 3 weeks, you are a whole lot more grateful and thankful for that vendor because of that experience, Whereas
100%.
you sell that franchise to somebody else that now has that on place, they don't have that same, they don't have the same context.
Yeah.
So sure, they might be thankful and they might be grateful, but their context is different because they didn't have the experience that way.
It's funny you say that, Kevin, because I tell our franchise, we've awarded about 200 licenses for Beam so far. So we'll have 35 to 40 stores open by the end of next year. And we give them the option to put in, commercial washer and commercial dryer. But I tell them during we call it Meet the Team Day, when they come in to meet everybody and sign their agreements and stuff. And I tell them, like, you can, but I'm telling you, you don't want to. Like, you do not want to live through what I lived through. So it's your choice, but learn from my pain. Like, learn,
Yeah. Well, this has been really, really awesome. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. And Roger, for anybody that's listening and going, man, Kevin, I really like Roger. I like what he stands for. How can they get more information on what you guys are doing and stuff?
Sure. There's two ways. One, you can check out the podcast that I do. There's 2 releases a week. It's on Spotify or Apple and YouTube, and it's Thrive More with Roger Martin.
Okay.
But I don't do a lot of the talking on that, right? I'm trying to, like you, I'd rather ask more questions, but I'm on that. So Thrive More with Roger Martin on Spotify, Apple, whatever. And then they can go to thrivemoorbrands.com, and there they can see the brands that we own, and we're always looking for additional fits. So if there's entrepreneurs that have a health and wellness business that they think is a high potential for franchising, then we'd love to have that discussion as well. And there's forms on there that they can fill out to have us contact and reach out to them. Or if there's somebody's listening and they're interested in franchising Rockbox or Beam, Rockbox Fitness or Beam Light Sauna, that same website, thrivemoorbrands.com, will give them links to do that as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if, just in closing, is there anything else that you feel that, like, you should just feel compelled to share as we call it a wrap?
I don't know if she'll hear this, but I am, well, actually, I should say they, not her. I am very grateful for my wife and my kids. And I have an incredibly supportive spouse who allows me to do the crazy stuff that I do in business and work the hours that I do and take the chances that I take. And I have 2 kids that they're 22 and he turns 20 next week, actually. So I have 2 kids that saw me in corporate America and then saw me on my own and were supportive of the journey when I went on my own, and just, held me up when I needed somebody to hold me up, and they got involved in the businesses in the way they could as teenagers. So I'm incredibly grateful to my family, because I think that, behind every great businessman or businesswoman, there's usually a pretty supportive spouse or a pretty supportive family. And that was certainly the case for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Roger, once again, thanks so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Really appreciate you. And I am excited to share this episode and get it out there.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.